Hey out there, and welcome to today's Search Engine Journal webinar. Hope you're having a great day, and we're thrilled to have you here with us. I am joined by Anka Thnea of SEO Monitor and Edward Coram James of GoUp. Today, we're going to be talking about how to forecast SEO with better precision and transparency. So if you're looking for improved forecasting methods, you're definitely in the right place. I think everyone on this call or anyone that's going to be joining us soon understands the often understated value of SEO, especially the stakeholders and executives. But these are the folks that you need to buy into your proposal. So today, Anka and Edward are going to show you how you can forecast confidently and more accurately. So first, my name is Heather Campbell, and I'll be your moderator today. Please use hashtag SEJwebinars to share any cool tidbits from today's learning on social. But first, let's meet our guest. Anka, I did mispronounce your name, and I am so sorry. So Anka, Edward, we're excited to have you here with us, but tell us a little bit about yourselves and your companies.
Hi, I'm happy to be here, and thank you for the nice introduction. You didn't mispronounce it. It's Senea, but no worries about it. I'm the community manager here at SEO Monitor, and we've been on the market for more than 10 years. We are building a product that's designed for agencies, and we are really happy to show you a bit of the philosophy behind it tonight, more specifically on forecasting and the way we approach forecasting. I cannot wait to hit it. And before that, I wanted to let you know that I think our entire team, almost our entire team, is here as well. So if you want to say hi, if anyone wants to say hi in the chat to Cosmin, who's our CEO, Alan, who's our head of marketing, Mada, who's our head of customer success, and also Alice and Christina, because some of the people here might have met them already. So if you want to say hi or ask them anything, feel free to do it in the chat. I'm happy to be here. Ed?
So my name's Edward Coram James, as Heather said earlier. So I'm the CEO of GoUp. GoUp is an international digital marketing agency specializing primarily in search marketing and SEO. We have offices in London and Los Angeles. We've won a lot of awards, which is really cool. And we work with clients ranging from Universal Music to Diageo, to international governments and through to kind of SMEs and disruptor brands. So it's a lot of fun and it's been a hell of a ride.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to let these two fine folks give you all of the information that you came for, but we're going to do a quick housekeeping first. So if you do experience any technical difficulties, please use the chat box to let us know. There are separate tabs for questions and chat, so take just a second to get familiar with those functions in the top right of your screen. If you see a question that you do like and you want Edward or Anka to answer it at the end, give that a little thumbs up. Your vote lets us know that is something that more of you are interested in. And so if you've attended our webinars before, you know that we try to answer as many of those questions as we can at the end. There is closed captioning here, so if you need that, it's the little CC up in the top right of your screen. And as always, we will do our best to link to any resources or tools in the chat, but if we miss one, just ask. Resources will also be included in your recap email. After the webinar, we ask if you can stick around for a short survey. It takes less than 2 minutes, and this information really just helps us gauge what works and how we can make SEJ webinars more useful for you all out there. And lastly, you will receive today's full recording. So watch your inbox for that. You'll get the slides, you'll get the recording. And with that, it's enough from me. So Anka, Edward, I'm going to get out of here, and it's all yours.
Great.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you very much, Heather. Right, so let's get this show on the road, guys. So the number one question, right? Why forecasting? Now, this is I'm going to touch on some of these themes kind of as this whole presentation goes on. So I won't go too much into it right now, but just to give a sort of bird's eye view. I have always had a little bit of a gripe with forecasting on the basis that forecasting by its nature is not something that is supposed to be for SEO agencies or SEOs or marketers in general. It is there for the client and the client only. We do it so that the client can understand, well, this is how much revenue we can expect to gain from our organic search each year. And then they can put that into their overall kind of business forecasting sheet in order to be able to get a reliable estimate for how much revenue they're going to be generating each year, and thus make pretty critical business decisions based upon that. Now, my experience with forecasting in the industry to date is that the vast majority of SEO professionals use it not for that end, but as a sales tool, without too much thought behind it, other than how can we get this sale over the line? How can we win this client? And so they tend to kind of put together pretty slapdash forecasting estimates that are pretty on the optimistic end. Whereas to me, the only use of forecasting as part of the sales process should not be as to kind of front end a KPI sheet, but to be stress testing whether you should be taking the client on at all. And I'll get into that in more detail now. So the first question, why forecasting, right? Well, sorry, why should we use forecasting as stress testing? And what I mean by stress testing is a lead comes in and there is sometimes a tendency to just jump on that lead and say, oh, great, let's just do a presentation for this client. Let's try and win this client because they're inquiring and we'd love the business. In my experience of running Go Up for the last 11 years, that's a pretty suboptimal way of going through the process. And we're SEOs, right? We're looking for the optimal way to do things. So an agency's profitability, right, is directly linked to how well they select their clients. Why is that? That's because if you select clients badly, then you're going to lose clients pretty quickly. So let's say that you take on pretty much anyone who's got the budget to do an SEO campaign with you, but you're not really looking into the numbers at the very start and qualifying them properly. You're going to arguably not match the client's expectations, and so you're going to lose the client. Now, the need that directly obviously leads to the fact that if you are churning clients and you're only retaining clients for 6 to 9 months, then in order to replace those clients, you're going to need a bigger marketing budget, you're going to need a bigger sales team, and also a bunch of unhappy clients means a bunch of unhappy account managers, because you don't want to be running an agency, or if you're working for an agency and all of their clients are unhappy, you're just going to lose that agency, which means increased recruitment costs for the agency and increased training costs for the agency. So on the other hand, well-selected clients result in clients that remain for a longer period of time. So what we do is we say, okay, we are going to use this kind of forecasting at the very start of the process, but we're going to use it as a way to kind of means test a client and work out whether or not a client should be a client at all. So if we, at the very outset of a process, run a forecast for a client, and this is a completely internal process, the client has no input into this whatsoever, and we often don't even show this to the client. We will literally be running the numbers and we will be saying, okay, well, we think that this campaign, in order to get the client measurable results, is going to cost, I don't know, £10,000 or $10,000 per month. However, we think that, which is going to be about 120 grand over the year. But we think, looking at these forecasting numbers and taking a sensible view on it, we think that arguably the campaign maximum is only going to gain them £120,000 or $120,000 a year. So that's break-even point. It's not going to be worth it for them. They're going to come on, they're going to be a client for about 8 months. They're going to be, even if we hit all of their results, they're going to be unhappy with the revenue generated from it. So they're going to leave. And for all of the reasons that we've just pointed out, that's not good for business. That's not good for profitability. And so even if this client is offering us a 10K a month budget, we at Go Up will reject it, and we will explain why. but we will reject it nonetheless. And that attitude of being very discerning and a bit on, a bit conservative in some respects as to who we take on as a client has year on year increased our turnover, year on year increased our profitability. As an agency, we have never not been profitable. From day one, we were profitable, and that's largely because of this. Well, one of the many reasons is because of this. So I touched on this a little bit earlier, saying that most agencies will pitch for the majority of briefs that come their way by using a common set of criteria. The only qualifications that most agencies use are agency capacity, budget, conflicts of interest, i.e. are we representing a direct competitor of this potential client, and industry specialism. Now, we add to this mix, and we have ethics in there. Is there a common set of ethics in place? So at GoUp, for example, we won't work with any business that is kind of the antithesis of sustainability. And so if someone is in petrochemicals or fossil fuels or anything like that, we'll say thank you, but no thank you. Why? Because we like working with people that we like working with. And I strongly advise this to everybody who is watching this as well, because again, it just allows for much longer client relationships. It means that you're all on the same page, you'll get along, and you're kind of you're taking on campaigns that you believe in. And no matter what your ethics are, I would make sure that they're shared by your clients. The next thing that we add into the mix is the whole point of today, business case forecasting. Is there a business case for them? Should the client really be undertaking an SEO campaign? And I would argue that it is our duty as SEO professionals to be saying to potential clients, no, don't take this on. And if there is one thing that I would love everyone to take home from this today, it's the ability to take a look at something and objectively put yourself in the eyes of the business owner who has come to you with their hard-earned cash and said, I want to undertake an SEO campaign. And instead of just seeing dollar signs, like take a breath, run the forecast. Is there a business case? Is there not? If there isn't, explain why there isn't. I think as a whole, it would improve our industry. And on an individual basis, I guarantee you that turning away business will increase the profitability of your own agency or your consultancy, whatever it is that you do. The next thing that we do is obviously discuss the objectives with the potential client. And we then run what we call a viability test. And a viability test is we literally look through their website, we look through the forecasting, and we say these objectives are achievable or not. And if they're achievable, we'll take them on. If not, then we won't. The final step that we take is just a chemistry call, where we have a call with them or a meeting with them and the team that will be at GoUp and work out whether or not we all get along. When to forecast? So there are different points when forecasting is important, right? In order to set accurate forecasts in terms of like, we are going to set KPIs that you, the client, can use and rely on and put into your overall business forecasting. So you're compiling all of the different revenue generating areas, whether it's socials, paid socials, PPC, outbound, whatever it is, putting them all in the sheet. Organic traffic is one of those in the mix. In terms of when you should be doing that from an SEO point of view, I would argue never do it at the outset of a campaign, ever. You don't have enough data points, and you also haven't made any technical changes to the site yet. So you don't fully know how Google and the other search engines is going to respond to those technical changes. We don't recommend setting KPIs until really month 4, month 5 of a campaign. That's when you should have made enough technical changes that you see how Google responds to them. If you just change a few meta tags and all of a sudden the needle goes from there to there, bang, then you know that you can set your KPIs quite high. If you do a huge amount of work in the first 4 months and Google doesn't really move the needle, then you know, okay, we need to be much more conservative about these KPIs. And so there's a reason to distinguish between kind of doing a stress test on whether there's a business case and setting KPIs. So as said, forecasting after month 3, 4, or 5, business case stress testing as part of the qualification process. Next, obviously, we'd like to look at, well, how would we stress test a business case? And I'm going to give you an example. So this is actually a real life example from a client about a year ago. So we could see that from target keywords, and sorry, just to qualify this again, this is only a relatively small selection of the entire kind of repertoire of potential keywords that they could be targeting. But from that relatively small fraction, we believe that a client has an opportunity to gain an extra 10,000 hits from Google organic non-branded search each month. According to Google Analytics, their conversion rate in terms of website visit to a lead, to an inquiry, not a sale, an inquiry, is 3%. So with good CRO, for anyone not familiar with the acronym CRO, means conversion rate optimization. By improving the conversion rate on their website, we believe that we can get their CRO, their conversion rate, to 4.5% from 3%, which means that from 10,000 additional organic hits per month, we think we can get an additional 450 leads per year. Their secondary conversion rate, being lead to client, this is not traceable via the website. You have to talk to the client for this part, is 25%. So every lead that comes in, they convert about 25% of them. So because of that, we can expect that this campaign will get them an additional 112 or 112.5 new clients per year. The profit on each new client is £3,000 or $3,000. Thus, the annual profitability of the campaign is £337,500. Sorry, I'm just running through these. So the annual cost of the campaign would be about £108,000. And therefore, the profitability for the campaign would be about £229,500 per year, i.e., this is well worth the campaign costs. If the campaign profitability, i.e., the potential profits of returns minus campaign costs, is less than double the campaign cost, the margin of error is going to be too small and we will not take on the campaign. I.e., if there is not at least a 2 times multiplier on the profits of the campaign, then we're not going to take it on. And this is in the business case scenario. So let's say our business case scenario says that if they have an annual cost, we know it's going to cost about 108,000 per year to run it. And we think that the campaign is going to, probably make them 190,000 in that first year. Then we probably won't take it on. Because obviously there's a margin of error in any kind of forecasting. And, if we miss the mark by £70,000, $70,000, which is very easy to do, they'll be near break-even point and they'll be unhappy clients. So there are some additional fail-safes, right? When we, so for instance, if our stress test includes 50 keywords, but in the industry, we know that there are thousands of good keywords to target, then we might put a 5 times multiplier on the final figure. So let's say that our final figure comes up with like, the campaign is going to earn £100,000 over the first year or $100,000 over the first year. But we know that in our forecasting sample, we've only used 100 different keywords, and we know that there are potentially 2,000 keywords to target. To be conservative, we know that we're being very conservative. We're going to stay a bit conservative, and we might just put an arbitrary figure of a 5 times multiplier on there. I.e., we might say, well, with this small limited amount of keywords, it is saying that they're going to make 100,000 per year. So we think in reality, they'll probably make 500,000. In other cases, we're going to war game the scenario wherein we are 3 months late on delivering the results. So what does this look like? Well, in the example I gave you earlier, this means losing 6,600 of those additional 10,000 visitors in year one. So in the example from the client that we took on last year, that would have meant that if we had been 3 months late on hitting their kind of year one targets, then in the first year, they'd have only had 3,400 extra visitors in year one, which would have meant a profit of £6,750, which is obviously like, a terrible return, and a margin of error means that they could easily lose money on that. So we probably wouldn't take it on. Other times, however, when there's a competitive field or a small number of keywords to target, we will only take 25% of the forecast result and see if there's still enough to warrant the campaign spend. So again, if let's say that 100,000 profit figure year one, if it was actually a very competitive field, even though our forecasts say, listen, they're going to make 100,000 in year one, we know that the margin of error for that is going to be very big. So to be very conservative, we might literally divide the figure in 5, and then you get to 20,000, and all of a sudden it's really not worth it. I'll take questions on this at the end, because I'm sure that there's potentially going to be some questions about how we choose those different scenarios and what kind of multiplier or division to put on it. And it's really important that stuff is ironed out. But I guess the overall point to remember is that this is for your use, not for the client's use. So this is for you to decide whether or not a client should come on board as a client, and to make that decision. And because of that, I would say it's always a good idea to find the most conservative figure that you can. Go with the kind of somewhere between worst case scenario and most likely scenario. And if it kind of still comes good based on that, then go with it. I've discussed this a little bit already, when to set KPIs. Month 3, 4, or 5 of a campaign, we discuss why that is. You just don't have enough data before then. And you don't know how Google is going to interpret the changes that you make to the site, or how aggressively they're going to interpret those changes. And so it's just not worth it. You're going to be way off. And I don't think I've ever really seen an example where an agency has set KPIs at the start of the campaign and then not been just way off by 12 months in. So don't do it. It's a dumb thing to do. Also the other thing is that by then the forecasting tool will be populated enough. So by about month 4 or 5, whereas before the campaign, we're starting talking about multipliers or divisions on the ultimate number. By about month 4 or 5, you should have populated whatever forecasting tool or method you're using. You should have the full gamut of keywords in there, which means that you'll be able to trust the final number. You won't have to say, we're going to times this by 5, or we're going to divide this by 5. So setting the campaign budget, and we're near the end of my part now, but setting the campaign budget. So I always think that it's really important that the SEO team and not the sales team sets the campaign budget. So I would not ask the client for their budget before you start. I wouldn't kind of say, well, what's your budget? And we'll work to that. Get their objectives, ping it over to your strategy team, say what is going to be required to hit these objectives, and then have the strategy team say it's going to be this, and then give them a price, and it's take it or leave it. Don't negotiate on it, because every time you drop your price, you are dropping the resources that you're going to be able to put to the campaign, and therefore dropping your ability to hit the target. There's a bunch of methods that we can use for this. And again, I'll kind of take questions on this in more detail at the end if anybody's interested. We have a number of different formulas that we use to set a campaign budget. Domain authority is only one small part of that formula. But essentially, it's about looking at the competitive landscape, working out, well, what are the pitfalls of their website? How much technical debt does it have? And how long is it going to take to chop through that technical debt? Thereafter, okay, well, what is the domain authority of the kind of people in the top 10? And how aggressive are we going to be with our PR campaign in order to top that? and then combine that with content. Like you can literally use really crude levels, measures like how much decent content, decent being the operative word, is on a competitor's website, and how much content do we think we're going to have to generate in order to top that. And obviously you don't need to top it like for like. If someone has like 10,000 blog posts, then the likelihood is most of that's going to be rubbish. And so you can probably top that by creating like 100 really, really solid pieces of content and content ideas. But again, don't do it yourself. Ping it to your SEO team, have them do it, and always separate out the budget with the sales process. That is not the job of a salesperson to do that. That is the job of the people who are going to be doing the work. So pitfalls of manual forecasting. So one of my big gripes with manual forecasting, i.e. literally creating a spreadsheet and kind of putting all of the right formulas in, is that most people in our industry are not data analysts, right? So I've got a really complicated spreadsheet that I use to create these forecasts, or that I used to create these forecasts, should I say. And it took me many, many, many days to create it. And I know how to build formulas properly. And, you know, I've got really specific experience and training in that field. When I see the forecasting methodologies of kind of amateur data analysts, it spits out unreliable data. And it can be completely biased towards the conclusion that they want to set. And so they're just junk. The other issue, obviously, is the kind of lack of, you can use it to literally be dishonest. So instead of just having a bias towards positive outcomes, you can actively skew the data in order to give dishonest outcomes to kind of give an edge on the competition, which I see a lot, and it happens a lot in our industry. And I'm sure that a lot of you guys will be familiar with seeing kind of competitors who have done that, and it's annoying, but also deeply dishonest. The other thing is the time invested in creating the models. Even though my kind of models are set up, not to toot my own horn, but very well, it took a long time to build them. And then on top of that, every single time that I'm populating it with new information, it's a long time. It's a lot of different fields that need to be populated. And so even filling it in, having completed the forecast formulas, it takes a long time. So there are 5 aspects to consider when building a forecast. The first is the intention. Is the model created specifically to justify the conclusion? I.e., I want to show that you should become a client. And so I'm going to build a forecast with the intention of showing you that you should become a client. In which case the forecast is always going to be biased to being overly optimistic, and therefore it's going to be really unreliable. Or is the model created to test the conclusion for validity? I.e., is the model built to actually stress test it and say, well, I'm building this model to see whether or not they should become a client, and I'm using it to test myself as much as to provide some data to the client. Data. Is the data used reliable? Where are you pulling the data from? Are you stress testing the data? Are you double checking it? And also, are you being really conservative with the use of data? That's very important as well. Conservatism. Is the forecast conservative, thus allowing the potential client to be under-promised and over-delivered? Are the right checks and balances built into the forecast to help ensure this? Traceability. Is the client able to review the different data inputs and scenarios that make up the model so that they can determine for themselves whether it is reliable and realistic? I.e., have you built a model that you would be happy for a client to look at the formulas and say, yes, I think that this is realistic? Would you be happy for someone at Google to look at this and say, yes, this is realistic? Or is it just, again, junk? And is it a model where actually you would rather someone didn't look at the formulas because it's just spitting out overly positive conclusions? And then the final issue with forecasting is accuracy. And the amount of times, again, as someone who knows how to build formulas and spreadsheets and do this kind of stuff manually, and kind of understands mathematics to a point of being able to do that properly. I can tell you the amount of times that my formulas have gone wrong. And there's one tiny little formula in, one tiny little box in your spreadsheet that isn't working properly. And it makes the whole spreadsheet spit out wrong numbers. But in order to see that that's not working properly, you have to go through every single one. And that is a very time-consuming process, and most people don't do it. And so if there's a single element of your spreadsheet that is wrong and spitting out the wrong formula, then you're going to be giving, again, junk results to a client, even if you know what you're doing. And an amateur at this isn't going to know what they're doing. And when I say amateur, I don't mean amateur SEO, because there are amazing SEOs who aren't good with building formulas. I'm talking, when I say amateur, I mean amateur at mathematics. And so even mathematicians have serious issues with always preserving the accuracy of their forecasting, which is why I don't recommend doing this manually. I do recommend using software for it, and we can get more onto that later. So I'm now going to pass over to the SEO Monitor team so that they can discuss a little bit more with you.
Thank you, Ed. You brought really insightful things to the table, and no worries, you will see Ed in 6 minutes or 7 minutes with the use case that he will present. And now let me tell you more about our methodology. Just 1 second. I hope everyone can see my screen. So as an SEO, as we've seen with Ed's examples, you have the technical know-how and specific metrics that you want to improve. And you know it will impact the website's performance. But business owners have other business metrics that they care about. They actually need an output in order to understand and validate the business opportunity, right? And when you do a forecast in Google Ads Keyword Planner, which is, I guess, very common for you, you can easily check how much value it can be created for a website and at what cost, show and prove to a client the potential future business results that are likely to happen if a budget is invested, or close or sell a deal. So in this case, it's clear what your proposal is and what the result should be. But in SEO, it's not always like that. Here, everybody builds proposals this one way or another, whether it's going directly from the deliverables and budget, betting on keyword improvements, on visibility improvements, or covering overall organic traffic growth, plus deliverables within a budget. This way, SEOs struggle to balance between how sound their data model is and how much effort they put into it. Because in SEO, we usually lack a simple tool like the Google Ads Keyword Planner. Here you have a clear view on the data quality and accuracy, and you can do a forecast in minutes once you know what keywords to focus on. But SEO can also work like PPC in some way, in terms of calculating the future value in keywords, search volumes, and CTRs of targeted ranks, right? The difference lies in the actual process of getting those ranks and how the budgets are spent. In PPC, you bid higher than your competitors and pay for the temporary placement. In SEO, you pay for creating better content, as Ed told you, than your competitors, improving technical aspects of your website and generating relevant backlinks through content marketing and other techniques. But with that in mind, we created a framework and the product that works similar to Google Ads Keyword Planner. And it helps you switch from SEO as a cost to SEO as an investment. And this way, you can reliably forecast future SEO business results by choosing keywords and ranking targets over a period of time. A reliable forecast will validate the opportunity from two big perspectives: assess the client potential and evaluate the campaign's budget and ROIs. And now let's see how you get there. Well, your main controllable input metrics are keywords and ranks, right? Yet you need to account for future changes. That's why we believe a reliable SEO forecasting helps you with the following things. First, understand the data modeling. And second, explain it to your team and your stakeholders. But in order to attain this, our framework makes use of the following elements that bring precision and transparency to your forecast. Let's take them one by one. First, setting a desired ranking target. Our framework starts from a desired future performance, the goal, and calculates potential business results if the targeted ranks are achieved, just like in PPC. Next, it also takes into account all the keyword variables that will influence the formula based on user behavior statistical data, mainly provided by Google products. Let's dive into them. And sorry for the dog. The average CTR curve. That's because the first critical variable of an SEO forecasting model is the click-through rate for each position in top 10. Based on our research, each keyword CTR curve significantly changes based on the SERP features and device mix. That's the data our model uses. So you get the real picture of each targeted keyword's potential. Next, the search volume, year-over-year trends, and seasonality. The second important variable in the SEO forecast model is the accuracy of the search volumes that are used. Our model takes into account the keyword's monthly seasonality and their year-over-year search trend, so you get a calibrated perspective. Then we have the device segmentation. Different search volumes and CTR curves based on device generate different results. It's normal. So it's key to consider how many searches are done on mobile devices and apply their corresponding CTR. Then the past conversion rate. Not all keywords have the same conversion rate, so they should be treated differently. Our model uses each keyword's conversion rate when available. When it's not available, the model uses the average conversion rate of the known brand organic traffic. So you get a realistic picture of everything. Then the long tail effect. The forecasting algorithm also takes into account the long tail impact of the keywords in the same semantic group with the ones you included in the forecast at first. This way, you're able to see enhanced search volume projections for each keyword based on the sessions brought by the entire topic. With each input, you bring more precision to your outcome, which is the non-brand organic traffic additional improvements, if those targeted ranks are achieved in your desired timeframe. And this is where you translate SEO performance into potential business growth. Then with these calculations, which are clear and transparent, you can see them all over the product, you can even compare the outcomes with your Google Ads equivalent budget. And with this approach, you're able to validate the SEO opportunity and necessary budget, quantify the SEO effort's impact on a longer-term basis, then align expectations between sales, marketing, and other stakeholders that are involved, and finally, have confidence in the potential future outcomes. And as the British statistician George Box put it in the 70s, all models are wrong, but some are useful. With that in mind, we aim to bring further transparency and precision through this framework that you've just seen. And it can be used through various cases, and GoUp relies on one of them. And now I will pass it over to Ed and hear how SEO Monitor Forecast serves them as an internal calibration tool. Over to you. I hope I have stopped sharing my screen. Yes, I did. Over to you, Ed.
That's really kind. Just before, I've seen a couple of comments from, I'm sorry, I'm going to get this name wrong, K. Pepime Thomas, and sort of backed up by Ava, saying everything just sounds strange to me. Life for a newbie, you're not alone. I think the point here is really simple, right? Okay, so to take a crude example, Diageo, right? And I say that because we work with them. Like, not on all of their brands, I'm sure they probably use several agencies, but if they want to forecast, right, that's because they need to know how many bottles of Smirnoff a year they're going to flog through organic traffic. because they need to know how much organic traffic is going, how much profitability organic traffic is going to generate from them. So when they are asking for a forecast, they need something that's reliable. But there is a tendency in our industry, and I think most people on this webinar will have seen this, whether they are a freelancer, a consultant, or an agency owner, or work for an agency, they'll have seen this where, you know, you see a competitor's proposal, or you're talking to a client and they'll say, oh, well, all of your competitors have sent me KPIs. And so I would like you to create some KPIs. And it's, you know, at pitching stage. And the problem is that if you do that, and it's Smirnoff, they're then going to take those KPIs, stick them into a spreadsheet, send them up to the CMO, who's going to send it up to the CFO and the CEO, who's going to say, oh, well, you know, this agency says that if we go with them, they are going to make us £1 million extra profit per year via organic traffic. And then as a result of that, we're going to make do. So they'll probably make hiring decisions based on that. All of these decisions are going to be made upon that. And you don't know. And so you're giving them kind of bad information, which actually could be really damaging to their business. And so the point is, forecasting has to be reliable. And it has to be based upon a set methodology that works and that isn't purely there to get a client to come on board as a client. And that's kind of what this all comes down to. I hope that makes sense. But without further ado, I'm going to start showing SEO Monitor. And how it's done here. There's no partnership with SEO Monitor. They're not paying me to do this. I genuinely think that it's a brilliant tool, and it has saved me a huge amount of time in the past couple of years. And so I highly recommend it. And yeah. Okay, so to kind of show a real life case study, there's these guys here. They're called Perlego. They do online textbooks, like textbook subscription for university students and students of all kind of colors and looks and persuasions and categories and everything. Like if you are a science student, they'll have something for you, like thousands of books. If you're a law student, they'll have thousands of books for you, and they'll go down really, 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 really niche into exactly what it is you're looking for. And they're really cool. And so what we are doing in this particular is we're going to have a look and see, okay, well, they come to you and say, will you pitch for my SEO campaign? And you want to see, okay, well, should I pitch for their SEO campaign? What is the opportunity for them? And so you can go and build these, you know, if they become clients, you'll fill this out much more than I filled it out, because you're not going to want to spend too much time on this. You're just going to want to get a steer on whether or not it's worth their while. And there's a really cool kind of tab that you can use in SEO Monitor. I'll just show you really quickly and then I'll get back to the point. Which basically says, okay, and there are literally thousands. This is basically their Google Analytics data, but you don't have to have access to Google Analytics and Search Console to get it. It's like kind of all of the thousands of targets that they're currently ranking for, and where they're ranking for it, what the search trend is in terms of the amount of traffic that keyword is getting each year, which is something that not many tools have, which is really cool. So anyway, I'm going to show you how we would stress test to see whether or not we would want them to become a client. We build a forecast. So to start with, you know, start date, okay, August 2022. Time frame, well, we're going to want to see what it might look like each month. For 12 months. In terms of progress speed, i.e. when are they going to get results, we're not going to do it exponential at this point. So exponential is like an upwards or a curvature like that. We're not going to do that because we don't necessarily think it's going to fall like that. Because as most people know, you're not probably going to get them any results noticeable in the first 4 months. So we're going to quickly change this here. It doesn't necessarily matter kind of what you put in here. So long as it, you know, kind of doesn't really start ticking up until later in the campaign. So this is just how much of their overall result are you going to get over the course of a year, and we're going to apply. We're then going to decide what keyword groups we're going to include in their forecast. So I've done, a relatively rudimentary amount, but still a decent amount of research into this, and kind of populated different keyword categories using that tool I was just showing you. So I'm going to throw in the languages section. That's like books about Spanish, books about French, books about German. I'm going to use the law section, the medicine section, the science section. I'm also going to get a little bit more laser focused here, and I'm going to add ebooks. I'm going to add PDF textbooks and textbooks more broadly. So you press apply, and this is quite neat. So it shows you obviously not only kind of the search volume per category, it also shows you how difficult it's going to be to get you there. So as a general rule, I would remove anything that says hard from your initial forecast. So hard, if it says hard, just get rid of it. Because again, this is for you, it's not for them. Obviously, you know that targeting hard stuff is going to be possible, but you want to go with the stuff that you're pretty certain about, not the stuff that is possible, but you're kind of on the fence with. So I would kind of get rid of anything that doesn't say medium next to it. If you look here, goal chance, it says a little bit under ambitious. So I would do something that's going to increase the ambition of it. That thinks it's too ambitious. So maybe top 5. Let's see what that says. Yeah, that seems about right. So press next. Next again, and bang, we've got our forecast right here. So what can we see from this forecast? Well, we can see that over the space of the year, it reckons that it's going to get us an extra 7.4 thousand conversions, right? On an additional session rate of 73.7 thousand. Now, let's say the conversion rate is, I'm just going to change this here because it's going to say conversion rate is 10%, and I don't think that will be true for these guys. I reckon it'll be more like 3%. You can obviously get that figure from Google Analytics. So this here thinks that it's going to get an extra 2.2 thousand conversions each year, right? Sorry, in year 1. Now, on this, because there are so many thousands and thousands and thousands of publications and books that Perlego is targeting, but I've only put 300 or used about 200 actually in this particular instance, I would put at the minimum a 5 times multiplier on that. So instead of 2,200, and in fact, I will stop sharing here, and I'll just share something else that I am using in order to get this data. This is a really, really, really simple spreadsheet. But, put your 2,200 in there. Then if you put a 5 times multiplier on it, you're looking at 11,000 additional conversions in year 1. That conversion value is about 12 pounds, or I can't remember if it was pounds or dollars. That's obviously an important detail. In this case, I put pounds. So their conversion value for year 1 is going to be about 132,000. Their campaign costs, when we costed it up in our SEO team, was going to be about 10,000 a month, which means their year 1 cost is going to be 120,000, which means that their profit year 1 is 12,000, which is tiny. It is well within the margin of error. And there's a very good chance that they would make a loss in year 1, even if we hit all of our targets. So if it was purely based upon year 1 data, I would say, don't do it. However, just going back to the other screen, if we look at this figure here, so if we kind of zoom in here, it says that in July of next year, so July in 2023, by then we're going to be getting an extra 18,900 searches per month. Now, obviously, that's a very different kettle of fish. And if we, it's 18,900. So I think let's just put that again into the same spreadsheet and see what it comes up with. So this is 18,900. So this is year 2. So the end of 13-month onwards, we're looking at monthly traffic of 18,900. With a 3% base conversion rate, we're looking at an additional 567 conversions per month. With a 5 times multiplier on that, we're looking at an additional 2,835 conversions per month, additional monthly revenue of about 34,000, which means an additional annual revenue of 408,000 on a budget of 120,000. So the annual campaign ROI is about 288,000. That means that the profitability multiplier is about 3.5 times. So it's about a 3.5 multiplier on there. We'd always want to look at the worst case scenario and the best case scenario as well to work out whether or not this is a campaign that we would take on. So to work that out, we literally, in worst case scenario, so this here, the profitability multiplier, that's what we consider the kind of most likely scenario. We think for every dollar they spend, we will make them $3.50. But again, this isn't a sales pitch. This is to stress test it for ourselves. And we go through this process every time. So we create a worst case scenario by literally halving that multiplier and a best case scenario by doubling that multiplier to get a kind of range of scenarios here. And so in this particular case, we think even in the worst case scenario, we're still going to make them 1.7 times multiplier. So again, this is a campaign that we would definitely think that there is a business justification to take on. And we would take it on and we would say to them, okay, this is something that we would love to pitch for. That's how we use it. It's really cool. There's like a whole bunch of ways that you can play around with it. But to give you an example, if I was to build that spreadsheet on my own, and I've got similar spreadsheets that I have built in the past, I'd be building the spreadsheet and inputting the formulas for days. And I would then probably be spending about 5 hours populating it. Whereas with this tool, I spent 3 minutes populating that on screen for you guys and probably like half an hour putting in the kind of keywords that I was going to target. So instead of spending 5 hours, I spent about, 33, 34 minutes. So for me, again, that is very good and well worth an investment. And I have come to use it in every single pitch that we take on. And I'd like to emphasize actually that, again, our profitability as an agency is intrinsically linked with how good our forecasting is before a client comes on board, because we use forecasting as a means to stress test whether we should take on a client. Getting that right, only taking on clients that you can get good results for, means you're going to retain your clients. And it means that you're going to retain your clients for a long period, years on end, which means that you're going to be much more profitable as an agency than if you are not doing this. And therefore you are setting unrealistic expectations or taking on clients who there's no financial kind of reason to do it, who are just going to get disgruntled, leave after 7 months, and you're going to have this constant churn of clients. So yeah. Is there? I guess I hand over to kind of everyone else, Heather, and if there are any questions, we would love to take them.
We'd love to take any questions, and if not, feel free to send us any other questions over email. We'll be happy to reply, especially product related. Heather, I thought you wanted to say something, or we can't hear you. No. Let's try again, once again. No, not yet. Okay, someone just tagged me. Thank you, Melanie. So should we be taking any questions, Heather? Or should we pick any questions from the chat? That's great, because I saw that, okay. I just saw that our colleague Mada just jumped in a question. because Hans here was asking whether, let me go into the question again and read it. Or new. So Hans was asking if we take into account the split between the branding and non-branded organic traffic and user intent, and also okay, if we apply frequentist or Bayesian statistical analysis or machine learning for looking at what might happen about search volume when forecasting, and if it will be representative for the 12 months. And yeah, I think Mada was right on point here, that yes, we do separate non-brand organic traffic from branded one. This is a very important component of our product and the way we do things. And the forecasting model takes into account year over year as the calibration for the search volume throughout the year. So yes, I hope if we can help with a more detailed answer, please do let us know and we will send over the entire explanation.
Can you hear me now, Anka?
Yes, we do.
Okay, good. Thank you. All right. So, I mean, honestly, we have 3 minutes left. You guys took up the whole time with a fantastic presentation. So we do have some questions, but what we'll do, we'll get to maybe like 1 or 2 of them, and then we'll send all the rest of them over. And if you want to follow up on your end, you could do that. So let's look at one, because I think that, let's look. Okay, so this one came from Hans. For such clients, do you consider a project period defined as a start and an end as a fallback sales model? So, Edward, anything there?
You're on mute.
You're on mute, Edward.
Sorry, can you clarify the question?
So for a project period, let's say the way that I read this is they're looking for success. When do they start judging from start to finish? Like maybe it's a month, maybe it's 2 months. When can you start seeing success, and when do you decide this isn't working and try to, start pivoting from there?
Well, okay, so this is why we will never set KPIs before month 4, month 5. And the reality is that that is a case-by-case basis, right? I'd love to be more helpful there, but that really is a case-by-case basis. I would say that the time that you start judging what kind of campaign is going to be in terms of results is going to be when the substantive part of your technical fixes, when you've sort of fixed the technical debt of the site, that is when that process should be undertaken. And so if a bigger client with huge e-com, let's say, that might take a year to be, churning through the technical debt there. And so you wouldn't want to be setting KPIs or kind of working out what they should expect until 12 months in. On a smaller, front end website, you might be able to chop through the technical debt in 2 months. Is that answering the question? I might have just answered a completely different question.
He actually just put in the chat. So let's see. It might not make sense to have them on retainer, but to have indexed crawlability issues that you can fix will more likely be worth it ROI wise, which means you're leaving them happy after the project period.
Yeah, okay. I guess this is, so we had a client, quite a big publication called The Gay Times, and I can't remember what it was, but we increased, just with one small set of technical fixes, right? We increased their traffic by hundreds of percent. It might have even been 1,000%. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was a huge amount. I guess it depends. Again, it's so case specific, right? Because it depends on the level of technical debt and the scale of the issue at hand. I think, to be honest, Hans, that's kind of a case-by-case basis. And I don't think that you can reliably forecast for that scenario, because it's a really specific issue, and you don't necessarily know how much is going to move the needle by fixing it. You just know that it's going to be worth fixing it. So I would say on a case by case, on a project basis, I think that this methodology is less applicable, because you're just talking about fixing really specific issues that don't necessarily, and some of those issues, you know, it doesn't necessarily matter whether or not it's going to have an immediate short-term impact on their profitability. It's just best practice. And so you should do it because it's going to make any future SEO campaign workable. Whereas if that technical debt isn't fixed in the short term, then, you know, it's going to make any future campaign not workable.
So I know that we're, you know, a little bit over time, but I have a good question that I do want to ask, and then we will let everybody go. And Anka put her email in there if you have extra ones. Are you okay on time, Edward?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, cool. Well, let's take this one. So Manuel asks, how can I forecast SEO for censored industries like cannabis?
How can I forecast for SEO on censored industries like cannabis? So when you say censored, do you mean like industries that like you can't run a PPC campaign and you can't run kind of social campaigns?
Yeah, that's how I would take that to mean things that are more difficult to get numbers for.
Well, you should still be able to get most of the numbers through tools like SEO Monitor, through, you know, essentially any kind of keyword tool, even the, you know, the kind of you know, tools available through AdWords. You're going to be able to get base figures, and so I think that forecasting is as applicable. You know, you're just limited in terms of your options as to what kind of marketing channels you can use, right? And in some respects, that's actually quite helpful because there's a huge array of marketing channels that marketing professionals can pull, many levers that we can pull as marketing professionals. And sometimes actually one of the biggest issues, I had this just before I jumped onto this webinar. I was on a call with a production studio. And one of the questions, or the primary question that they're interested in is, okay, well, which marketing channels should we use? And the reality is that in terms of trying to identify what is going to have the strongest ROI versus which is just going to be a brand building exercise, it can sometimes take, like, again, 6 months worth of data in order to sort that out, and kind of small trials here and there to work out that question. Whereas in censored industries like cannabis, you know full well that most of the marketing channels available to you in other campaigns you're not going to have. And so you know that you can only forecast using things like organic traffic, which actually makes the forecast in some ways much more reliable. And I would say the short answer is I would use exactly the same methodology that I have gone through in this webinar. And I would say that in that case, this webinar and the methodology explored in it is even more applicable. I hope that makes sense.
Perfect. Well, with that, we are a little over time, so we're going to let everybody go. But before we go, Edward, Anka, you want to let the people know where to find you? Anka already left her email, but Edward, how about you?
Yeah, very happy. So let me tap it down here. In fact, I'm going to put my PA's email because I don't know how many questions you people are going to send me. So I'm going to put my PA's email in there. But I absolutely promise you that I will try my best to return everyone's questions. Running an international agency means that I'm relatively time limited, but if you are patient, I will respond to you.
Perfect. Anka, Edward, thank you very much for being here with us today and dropping all of this fantastic knowledge on us for forecasting. So until next time, we'll see everybody later. Have a good day. Thanks.
Thank you. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye.